13 spine-chilling encounters, terrifying true stories from haunted Target night shifts exposed. Jenna had never imagined she'd be navigating the dark, cramped aisles of a Target store in Oakwood alone in the haunted stillness of the night. As she swiped her ID badge and stepped into the fluorescent glare, the familiar store felt like a ghost town, everything draped in shadows that seemed to dance just beyond her line of sight. The heavy silence wrapped around her like a shroud, and she felt a cold knot settle in her stomach. It started slowly, the flickering lights overhead sending uneasy shivers by the minute. A strange, mournful whisper threaded through the air, almost as if a voice was trying to reach her from the shadows, calling her name softly. Jenna. She shook her head, trying to push it away, chalking it up to exhaustion. But as the night dragged on, she noticed her coworkers sharing glances, smiles frozen like ice, hints of unspoken dread swirling in the air around them. One evening, she stumbled upon something that sent her heart racing. The break room wall was peppered with old clippings. Mysterious disappearance of Target night worker haunts employees. Jenna's breath caught in her throat. She thought of the fellow employee who vanished, leaving nothing but questions behind. A shiver danced up her spine, shadows crept closer, and the grocery aisle seemed to warp as though they were alive, mocking her fears with every flickering light. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The next shift, Jenna found herself restocking shelves in the food aisle when a flicker of darkness darted from the corner of her eye. She snapped her head around, breath hitching in her throat. Empty. Just the endless, cold aisles, the plastic wrapping against stale food. But her heart raced now as she realized she wasn't alone. Staring at her with pitiful eyes were customers, so familiar, asking about her late husband. "How's he doing?" they whispered, the gasps of her heart echoing the eerie atmosphere. Every visit began to feel like a sick joke, their eyes betraying a knowledge that cut deep into her skin, leaving goosebumps rising in their wake. She fought to keep her thoughts from spiraling, focusing on her little girl Lily, curled in bed, her warmth a tether to sanity. But panic crept in when Lily fell ill. Desperation clawed at her when Jenna rushed through the store for supplies, the shadows morphing and stretching into grotesque forms that seemed to close in. A figure lurked at the end of an aisle, one she recognized too well, but with an unsettling twist. With no way out, the aisles twisted and shifted, trapping her in a labyrinth of dread. As she frantically searched for medicine, the ominous feeling intensified, whispers growing louder, dancing around her like shadows, swelling into a cacophony of warnings. Who could she trust? The aisle lights flickered, a sign, a warning. Who was watching? The answer blurred in her mind, but a confrontation was brewing, one with a darkness she was not prepared to face. The question loomed like a storm overhead. When safety is but an illusion, whom can you truly trust? As Jenna stood frozen in the aisle, her chest tightened with panic. The dim glow of the flickering lights cast erratic shadows that danced and twisted, creating an unsettling charade. Then it happened. The low hum of the store fluorescents surged, and in that moment a cold breeze swept past her, carrying a whisper that felt almost tangible. "Find me," it implored, echoing in her mind like a haunting refrain. She was paralyzed, clinging to the edge of the shelf. Lily's face flashed before her, those innocent eyes, the trust she had when her mother would rush to solve any problem, bring solace to every ache. But now, what if she couldn't make it home? What if something happened in this labyrinth of despair? A shuffling sound broke her thoughts. Jenna turned sharply, her heart racing as she darted her gaze across the aisles. Nothing, just the vast emptiness, the relentless murmur of an unseen presence. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to escape. Yet an unshakable curiosity pulled her deeper into the glow of the haunting fluorescent lights that swayed as if teasing her with the hold they had over her. Then she spotted it. A lone shopping cart, abandoned at the end of the aisle, its wheels creaking softly like a child's toy left forgotten. She stepped closer, heart pounding in rhythm with her steps, and peered over the edge. Inside the cart sat crumpled packaging and a familiar teddy bear. Jenna's breath hitched in her throat. The bear belonged to Lily, and this wasn't the first time she had seen it. Just days ago, Lily had tossed it aside in frustration, tired of its tattered fur and missing button eye. "You don't love me," she'd cried. The guilt of that moment stung, and seeing it now, here, was like a noose tightening around her throat. Lily. The name slipped from her lips, heavy with dread. "Where are you?" It felt like the walls were closing in, an invisible hand squeezing tighter, but the shadows behind her were now moving with purpose. Every aisle began to pulse with energy, a living nightmare that tightened its grip. Goosebumps cascaded down her arms as she sunk deeper into the store's grip. The soft murmur of voices began to echo around her. They seemed to be whispering her daughter's name, reverberating through the shelves like sinister secrets spilling from ancient mouths. Suddenly, a harsh scream broke through. Jenna whipped around just in time to see Victor, her co-worker, darting past her, eyes wild and face pale, as if he had seen the darkest depths of despair. "We have to get out, now!" he shouted, breathless and frantic. Before Jenna could respond, the lights overhead flickered ominously to black, plunging everything into a cloaking darkness. Her pulse raced as she strained to hear him over her own heartbeat. Not a second later, the emergency lights flickered on, dim, flickering, casting eerie shadows and unfamiliar figures slinking through the aisles. "Victor?" she called out, panic slicing through her voice. There was no answer, just the oppressive weight of silence pressing down on her. "Find me," the plea echoed once again, a relentless echo that reverberated deep within her bones. She had to confront whatever lurked in the shadows. She had to uncover the truth before it smothered her completely. With a deep, trembling breath, determination burned in her heart. "I'm coming, Lily," she shouted, pushing forward into the oppressive darkness. But what she didn't know was whether she was stepping into the void or a deeper trap, one where the boundaries between life, death, and the haunting stories of the store blurred. In the chaos, Jenna felt a presence, cold and looming, creeping closer with every heartbeat. The truth awaited her. What had happened to her co-workers, to those whispered names in the dark? And as her resolve hardened, the shadows accepted her call. But would she find her daughter, or just herself, lost in the echoes of the night? Jenna forced herself to move, the air thick with a musty, clinging darkness. every step drawing her deeper into an unknown nightmare. Each flicker of the emergency lights created illusions, shape-shifting shadows that taunted her, elongating and collapsing with an eerie rhythm. She could feel the walls breathing around her, the store awakening like a hungry beast, waiting for its next prey. "Lily!" she screamed again, desperation rising in her chest. But the sound of her voice was swallowed whole, leaving behind only a resonating chill. She stumbled, almost losing her balance, as her foot caught on something, a frayed piece of fabric that felt sickeningly familiar. A small shirt, stained and discarded, like something unworthy. It was Lily's. The reality slammed into her, a wave of panic flooding her senses. "Where are you?" She had to push through. The store's familiar aisles twisted her memories, morphing into impossible corridors of dread. She recalled whispering to her daughter about the wonders in those aisles, the soft toys, the candy, the latest games. But all that was left now was dread and emptiness. Jenna moved further down the aisle, adrenaline coursing through her veins. With each heartbeat, the whisper returned, echoing a more sinister tone. "Find me." It clawed at her, creeping under her skin, burrowing into her mind, until she felt frayed at the edges, every nerve ending vibrating with fear. Then she heard it, faint footsteps scuffling behind her. She spun around, but when the light flickered back to life, nothing was there, just silence, punctuated by her ragged breath. "Victor?" she called uneasily, but her voice trembled, a small part of her knowing he wouldn't answer. Convinced she was alone, Jenna pressed on, dread pooling in her stomach. The aisles stretched endlessly. How had she not noticed the signs before? Muffled cries echoed, fading into muffled laughter that danced on the brink of madness. Shadows flitted in her peripheral vision. Each time she turned, they vanished. Suddenly her eyes caught a flicker, something crawling under the light. It was a figure, a little girl, skipping with a sad, lopsided smile, clutching tight to a tattered teddy bear, Lily's bear. "Mommy?" The word dripped with innocence, yet was laced with something far darker. The figure turned, revealing empty, hollow eye sockets. Jenna's heart seized. She opened her mouth to scream, but the sound died before it was born. "Come play with me," the apparition whispered, the voice a haunting echo of her daughter's giggles. Each word dripped with malice, chilling her blood. "It's so lonely." Without thinking, Jenna dashed backwards, desperation fueling her escape. The shadow surged, colliding with her, disorienting her. She rounded the edge of a display, nearly colliding with the shelf, and pressed her back against it, gasping for breath. "Find me!" The whisper grew louder, morphing into a cacophony that echoed from every corner of the store. It surrounded her, demanding attention, a pitiful cry turned into a curse. Fear struck her, and she felt hopeless. Would she ever find her daughter? Was this all a hallucination, or something more sinister? The lights flickered again, and she spotted Victor once more, a fleeting glimpse of panic and despair, barely visible before darkness swallowed him whole. "Victor!" The wailing sound filled the void. Then silence. Jenna stood enshrouded in the terror of the unknown. What lay ahead? Would she uncover the truth lurking in the dark, or would she succumb to the horror that tightened around her chest? And as the shadows whispered her name, the chilling echo remained, a reminder that whatever she was searching for was drawing closer, waiting for her to surrender, to truly find her. But would it be worth the cost? Would she ever escape? Heart racing, Jenna pressed herself against the shelf, the cold metal biting into her back. The whispers intensified, swirling around her like a malevolent storm. It was maddening, relentless. Find me, find me. She struggled to shake off the weight of dread that enveloped her. Through the blaring silence, she could still feel the presence of that figure lingering just beyond the edge of the flickering light, the echo of the childlike voice, faint but insistent. It gnawed at her mind, taunting her to yield to the darkness. Fighting to regain control, Jenna took a hesitant step back. Each inch felt like a sin, a betrayal to all she hoped still existed. She forced herself to take a deep breath, combating the nauseating urge to flee blindly into the unknown. As she stepped into the dimness again, the floor creaked underfoot, an odd sound that was too loud in the stillness. "Lily," she whispered, but even she could barely recognize her own voice. It was lost to the shadows that flickered around her. Panic gripped her again. What if she were not alone after all? Dread seeped into her veins. She remembered the small shirt, the fabric rough against her fingers. It didn't matter if she couldn't trust her eyes. The familiar scent of Lily's shampoo still lingered in the air, fresh like haunted memories. From the far aisle, she caught glimpse of movement, a shadow flitting behind a display. She froze. The sudden stillness of the world around her intensified her heartbeat, each thud echoing in her ears. Jenna took a cautious step forward. "Lily?" No response. Shadows danced like whispers, flickering away when her gaze landed on them. Were they playing games with her? Or was it all an illusion? A seed of doubt blossomed in her heart. She took another step, the ground slippery under her feet. "Mommy?" The voice was now closer, but twisted, distorted. It echoed down the aisle like a ghost. Desperation clawed at her throat. She dashed towards the sound, fear propelling her forward. But the aisle seemed to stretch infinitely. The shelves loomed like prison bars. "Lily!" she screamed again, the name a prayer on her lips. And then she saw it. The girl, her daughter, slowly turned towards her, that same tattered bear nestled under one small arm. Except this time, something was different. The giggle, sweet and light, morphed into a harsh, echoing cackle. Black shadows crawled at the edges of her vision, slithering around the girl. The bear was covered in thick, dark stains, the fabric fraying at the edges. "I've been waiting, Mommy!" The voice twisted with glee that pierced through Jenna like a knife. "Get away from her!" Jenna lunged forward, boundaries between reality and nightmare collapsing. But the girl only giggled again, stepping backwards into the dark. Horror creased Jenna's face as she lunged, reaching for her daughter. But the girl faded away into the shadowy abyss. "No!" She felt the bile rise in her throat. She was losing her, losing both of them. Then a low rumble vibrated around her, making shelves shake. The lights flickered violently, casting shadows that warped into grotesque shapes, twisting her worst nightmares into a living nightmare. A scream escaped her lips, but it felt hollow in the crushing darkness. The voice was back, the cacophony becoming unbearable. "Find us, together, forever!" Jenna clutched her head as darkness swirled, a tempest that threatened to pull her under. She was forced to make a choice. Was it time to break the illusion and confront the thing that hunted her? Or was the truth too terrifying to behold? As the whispers collided with her sanity, Jenna steeled herself, ready for the inevitable confrontation. But before she could decide, a figure dashed past her, barely visible. A movement caught her eye. Victor? Victor! She gasped, heart pounding faster now than it ever had. "Help me," came a distant echo, but there was something wrong with it, a sinister undertone that made her blood run cold. Rushing towards the sound, Jenna felt the shadows close in, their chill like a grip around her throat. The hunt was on. What awaited her in the depths of the darkness? Could she rescue Victor, or would she surrender to the shadows? Jenna's heart thudded in her chest as she stumbled forward, trying to push through the thick veil of darkness. Each step felt like wading through molasses, every inch forward a battle against an unseen force that tugged her towards the abyss. "Victor!" she cried out, voice hoarse with fear. The whisper of his name disappeared into the encroaching shadows, as if they were consuming her words, swallowing them whole. "Help me!" The voice was clearer now, tinged with a desperation that sent icy fingers crawling down her spine. It came from deeper within the labyrinth of shelves. She gritted her teeth, forcing her legs to move despite the overwhelming urge to run away. But with every hesitation, the shadows grew bolder, swirling around her, wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. Jenna could feel their clammy touch, probing and cold, seeking any vulnerability to exploit. The ground shook again, a deafening roar of vibrations that rattled the shelves. A sudden blare of lights flickered violently above, each flare illuminating grotesque faces in the darkness, a twisted reflection of anguish and mockery. "Victor!" she called again, the name clawing helplessly at the air. "Come closer." The voice was sing-song, taunting, as if reveling in her fear. There was a pull that urged her deeper into the shadows, a promise of salvation intertwined with dread. Gritting her teeth, Jenna pressed forward, her breath hitching as she turned another corner. Shelves loomed like ancient sentinels, guarding secrets long buried. The air grew colder, and she felt the distinct sensation of being watched. A flicker of movement caught her eye. There, in the corner of the aisle, was Victor, a silhouette framed by erratic light. He was kneeling, head bent low. Relief washed over her momentarily, but doubt quickly followed. "Victor?" she whispered, edging closer, dread mingling with hope. His head snapped up, but his face was obscured in the shadow. "Mommy," he rasped, voice barely audible, as if struggling against some unseen weight. But nothing about him felt right. His eyes, wide and glassy, seemed to search for something beyond her, through her, into the depths of the darkness. "No! Stay back!" she screamed, stepping back instinctively. He didn't look like the boy she knew. The shadows flickered around him, winding through his fingers, pulsing darkly at his feet. "Please, come closer," he implored again, voice now crackling, dripping with something that felt too sinister, too wrong. Jenna felt her heart race. "Victor, I'm here! I'm coming!" But her voice wavered, a split second of hesitation as she scanned the area. Everything felt wrong. The shelves seemed to bow inward, closing her off from the escape she desperately sought. Suddenly, the shelves shuddered violently, and a deafening crash echoed through the darkness. The lights flickered one last time before plunging her into utter blackness. "Find us." The dual whispers floated through the air, morphing into a chilling choir that filled the hollow void. "Together, forever." Panic surged through her as she turned to run. But where were the aisles leading? The space warped around her, pulling and twisting in ways that defied logic. She stumbled, hands grasping the fabric of the air, searching for something to anchor her sanity. "Victor!" she cried, fear twisting in her gut. But there was no response, only the silence that wrapped around her like a vice. How long had she been lost? Then came the laughter, a cruel, dark crow of joy that tore through the silence. It echoed in her ears, drowning her thoughts, wrapping around her brain like invasive roots. It was all-consuming. Jenna gasped, her throat closing up, as shadows shifted and coiled in the corners of her vision. "What do you want from me?" she screamed, desperation in each syllable. "Join us," came the choir again, each voice weaving into her mind, erasing her resolve. "We won't be alone." And in that heart-stopping moment, Jenna felt her will falter. A pull, a beckoning to step into the darkness. As tendrils of shadow crept closer, she realized the truth. This was no longer just about finding Victor or Lily. It was about survival. Would she find the strength to fight back, or would she become just another whisper in the darkness? Just then, something shifted within the gloom, revealing a glint of light in the distance, a flicker of hope, or an illusion crafted by the malevolence that thrived in the dark. With bated breath, Jenna decided to take a risk. But as she sprinted toward the light, deep down, she knew the real terror was yet to come. Would it lead her to the truth, or to her doom? Jenna sprinted toward that flicker of light, her heart pounding like a war drum. Each step echoed her desperation, and the dark tendrils receded slightly, drawn back as if the light possessed a power they feared. But she could feel their angry whispers curling around her ankles again and again, all calling her back. "Victor!" she shouted again, breathless, pushing on, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The light grew brighter, almost inviting, yet the laughter echoed around her, wrapping around her like a winter cloak, and she shivered. When she burst into the illuminated space, her breath caught. It was a stark contrast to the darkness behind her. The room was wide, shelves lining the walls filled with forgotten things. Dolls with cracked porcelain faces, old toys with missing pieces, and books whose titles had faded into oblivion. But in the center of it all stood a small table, and upon it was an open book glowing with a soft, eerie luminescence. Drawn in, she approached it. The pages turned slowly on their own, revealing handwritten words that twisted and curled along the paper, forming sentences that seemed to hum and pulse with energy. They spoke of a family lost, of betrayal, and of choosing to sacrifice one for another, each decision leading to unspeakable horrors. Her skin crawled as she read the chilling accounts, each story echoing a familiar longing for understanding and closure. Suddenly, the warmth from the book flickered, and shadows bled over the edges of the pages, inching toward her like hungry predators. "No!" she yelled, stepping back in panic. A figure materialized behind her, cloaked in black, malformed limbs stretching in unnatural angles. Its face was shrouded, but she felt its eyes, cold and devouring. "You should have joined us," it hissed, its voice a sickening amalgam of her own fears and haunting whispers. Jenna whirled around, panic flooding her senses. She had come too far to succumb now. "Where's my son? Where is Victor?" she demanded, fighting the despair pooling inside her. "We are all here, in the space between," it replied, the shadows swirling around it like a storm. "You just have to let go." She shook her head violently, refusing to succumb to whatever dark promise lingered. "No, I won't." "Join us," it insisted, voices rising in a chorus of temptation. "Feel the freedom of letting go. He's already here, Mommy." And suddenly she heard it, Victor's voice, faint but distinct. "Mommy, please." Tears streamed down her face as she struggled against the magnetic pull of the darkness. "No, this isn't real," she screamed, clutching at her temples, but the words resonated, digging into her mind like jagged rocks. Taking a deep breath, she turned back to the glowing book. Its light flickered reassuringly, urging her to focus. She had to find a way to protect Victor, to break whatever seal held him captive. Jenna reached for the pages, hands trembling. "What do I have to do?" she whispered, half expecting an answer from the abyss surrounding her. The air shifted. It felt like breathing life into a long-forgotten hope. But just as clarity began to creep in, the shadows surged, looming over her, shrieking in outrage, stretching far beyond the edges of reason. They writhed for her attention, desperate to reclaim their prey. "Leave her be!" A voice thundered from the shadows. A figure emerged, cloaked and fierce, standing between her and the consuming darkness. It looked vaguely familiar, and yet the way it moved hinted at something both protective and volatile. "Flee!" it urged, gesturing toward the door, "before it's too late." In that moment, Jenna faced a choice. Run toward the exit and abandon the one voice that called to her, or trust this newfound ally in the fight against the gathering storm. Fractured memories seemed to flicker in her mind. Was this a savior or another trick of the darkness? "I will save him," she cried defiantly, choosing to confront the darkness head-on. But as the shadows lunged, a chilling realization dawned. The cost of her choice could unravel everything, ensnaring more than just her son. With the shadows circling, the air thickening, Jenna locked eyes with the figure, uncertainty swirling. "Fight with me, or leave me," she demanded. But as she grabbed the book in desperation, the darkness roared in fury, pushing forward with an intensity she had not anticipated. What would happen next? Would the book provide a path to rescue, or would the shadows secure their grip forever? All she had left was a breath, a heartbeat, the whisper of hope that this time she wouldn't lose. But could she awaken Victor before the shadows claimed them both? The shadows clashed with Jenna's resolve, their furious roars drowning out all thought. Panic twisted in her gut as the darkened figure before her melted into the swirling mass, merging into something far more monstrous. "Now!" the cloaked figure bellowed, reaching out toward her. The warmth of their hand brushed her skin, igniting a spark of bravery buried deep within. "We face this together." Jenna's heart thundered as she centered herself, eyes locked on the flickering book. Its glow pulsed in rhythm with her fear, each heartbeat intensifying the shadow's thrashing. "What do I do?" she screamed, her voice chillingly small against the tempest. "Read!" the figure called urgently, hands gripping her shoulders. The words will guide you. They hold your past, your strength." She stumbled over to the table, spine straightening. The pages twisted, each sentence urging her closer to the edge of eternal darkness. "I will not fall," she shouted, heart racing, fingers trembling over the luminous text. As she began to read, the ink seemed to writhe in response. Stories of loss, blended with the bitter taste of betrayal, clawed at her memory. She could feel them, lives entwined with her own, like a shaky family tree. They were using her grief to anchor their souls. And for every line read, an echo rang out, ghostly voices begging for release. With every word, the shadows thrashed, anger rippling through their form like a broken string of thunder. "Stop! You cannot erase us!" they hissed, clawing at her sanity. But Jenna pushed on, the haunting cries of Victor urging her. "I'm here, sweetheart, I'm here," she whispered, fighting the rising tide of despair. "Victor deserves to be free," the figure urged, still standing resolute against the darkness. "Focus on the love. They can be bound by it." She steadied herself, breathing in deep, letting warmth infuse her limbs. "Victor, I won't let you go. I won't lose you again." The light from the book flared brighter, filling the room with a fierce luminescence as she poured her heart into the words, fueling them with determination. The shadows shrieked, a mix of rage and feigned desperation. "You will join us!" they cried, their twisted forms shifting violently, trying to regain the upper hand. Jenna felt their cold fingers reach for her, brushing against her cheek, igniting an icy terror. Suddenly, the book exploded with blinding light, scattering the shadows like a swarm of frightened flies. They recoiled, but the fury still pulsed through them, fierce and relentless. "Cling to the light, Jenna," the cloaked figure shouted, the air trembling around them. "Find the source within you." Against the chaos, she concentrated, channeling her love into a blinding shield. Memories of Victor's laughter, his tiny hands in hers, the warmth of his cheek against hers. The whispers returned, but now they were filled with determination. She dropped her fear like a heavy coat, embracing the untapped strength beneath. "I will break you!" she screamed, lifting her hands as if to harness the chaotic energy swirling around. Just then, the shadows lunged, reaching for her heart. In a moment of sheer desperation, Jenna unleashed a shout. Ancient words scribbled across the pages rang clear in her mind. "You have no domain in my heart. You cannot claim what you do not own." With her last breath, she slammed her palm against the book, and the light erupted. A shockwave cut through the air, the shadows imploding into shrieks as they dissolved in fury. But for every shadow expelled, a terrifying silence followed, echoing the absence of Victor's presence. Jenna's heart stopped momentarily, and dread overwhelmed her. "Victor!" she cried, voice shaking and raw. The air was thick with tension. "Where are you? I need you!" The remnants of the dark entity lingered, whispering promises of despair, taunting her with what she had fought through. As the aftershocks faded, she looked to the figure, panic etched across her face. "Where is he?" But the cloaked protector only shook its head, eyes filled with an understanding that chilled her spine. "The battle isn't over, Jenna. The shadows won't let him go so easily." Panic surged through Jenna as realization settled like ice in her veins. "What do you mean?" She had claimed victory, yet something loomed, darker than her worst fears, waiting in the silence. In that moment, she knew the struggle had just begun. Was she truly fighting the shadows only to lose Victor to an even greater darkness? And in answer, the shadows began to coalesce again, more menacing than before, each pulse reverberating with a promise of despair yet to come. The darkness shimmered, swelling ominously as the remnants of the shadows gathered. Jenna's heart slammed against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat echoing the chaos around her. She had sent some of them away, but they regrouped, morphing into greater horrors. Each tendril twisted like smoke, each whisper a promise of devastating terror. "You think you've won?" they hissed, their voices overlapping into a cacophony of malice. "You know nothing." "Stay back!" Jenna shouted, trying to reclaim any spark of courage. She felt the book's heat slowly dissipate, its glow dimming. Desperation clawed at her throat. This was a trick. She had to remember that. The figure beside her still held firm. "Focus, Jenna," they urged, voice clear against the shrieking shadows. "You must find the truth inside." The shadows formed into grotesque shapes. Some resembled familiar faces wreathed in agony. She gasped, recognizing snippets of her past, the sickening betrayal, the weight of loss. But no, she wouldn't let them twist her memories to their will. "You're nothing but echoes. You can't control my heart." "Stay back!" Jenna shouted, trying to reclaim any spark of courage. She felt the book's heat slowly dissipate, its glow dimming. Desperation clawed at her throat. This was a trick. She had to remember that. The figure beside her still held firm. "Focus, Jenna," they urged, voice clear against the shrieking shadows. "You must find the truth inside." The shadows formed into grotesque shapes. Some resembled familiar faces wreathed in agony. She gasped, recognizing snippets of her past, the sickening betrayal, the weight of loss. But no, she wouldn't let them twist her memories to their will. "You're nothing but echoes. You can't control my heart." "Remember the light," the cloaked figure replied, stepping closer, almost a shield against the dark mass. "You can use it to gather your strength." Gather her strength? For what? The shadows howled louder, fracturing her thoughts. They mixed regret with yearning, taunting her with visions of Victor, a shadow of his bright spirit dimming in the darkness. "Victor!" she screamed. "I will bring you back." The words rang out, firming her resolve. But the shadows recoiled, shrieking as she fumbled through her mind, searching for a thread of hope in the murk. She grasped at memories, trying to light a flame. She pictured Victor, his excitement during those summer days, the innocence in his laughter. The image reignited her determination, a warm beacon flaring in the cold abyss. With a sudden rush, she threw her hands forward, and energy surged through her, radiant and blinding. "I will not give up," she cried, forcing the memories into the shadows, shoving them back with the warmth of her love. The chaotic mass jerked violently in response, shadows flaring in the radiant glow. But the shadows screamed, a pitch that pierced through the air, curdling the very fabric of her sanity. "Foolish girl!" they roared, their forms warping, transforming into something unrecognizable, grotesque teeth bared in a nightmarish laughter. Suddenly, the ground shook beneath her feet. The cloaked protector grabbed her, eyes wide with dread. "This is no illusion, Jenna. They're coming for you." What do I do? She barely heard her own voice over the din, fear ravaging her composure. The book inched away, as if slipping from her grasp. "Close it," the figure screamed. "Seal the darkness with your heart." "But what if it traps me instead?" "Trust the light. Follow the truth." With a deep breath, Jenna lunged for the book, determination flooding through her bones. As she firmly grasped it, shadows lunged, clawing at her, furious wails filling the air. She could feel the weight of despair pressing against her chest like a leaden weight. The darkness was trying to swallow her whole. "Victor!" she shouted one last time, bringing forth the memory of his innocent smile as a shield. The shadows recoiled, hissing in fear. They didn't want her to remember. In parsing, Jenna instinctively opened the book again, shifting through pages glowing with her light, and word after word spilled from her mouth, reverberating through the hollow space, banishing more darkness. Yet for every shadow destroyed, the air thickened with a more profound presence, one that hungered for despair. Something deeper than the shadows lurked, a terror far older. And then she felt it, a chilling whisper seeping into her mind. "You will never see him again. You're not strong enough." A terror surged as a figure materialized from the darkest corner of the space. A silhouette, tall and imposing, its eyes glinting like knives. "Hello, Jenna." The shadows around it pulsed eagerly, eager for her fear. Who was this new enemy, and what else did they want from her? A cold dread closed around her heart, wrapping tightly, threatening to crush her. "Who are you?" she managed, voice quaking as the figure stepped closer. A smirk curled on the silhouette's lips. "I am the one who holds the key to Victor's fate. Do you have the strength to claim it?" Jenna's breath caught as the darkness tightened its grip, a chilling promise of an unending struggle lingering in the air, revealing that the real battle was only just beginning. The figure loomed larger as it stepped into the shimmer of her flickering light. Jenna could barely make out the details. Gaunt features, hollow cheeks, and eyes that seemed to drink in the brightness, leaving her with a sense of impending doom. That smirk, it twisted her stomach. Rage bubbled under her skin as panic clawed at her throat. "Let him go!" Jenna shouted, her voice trembling but fierce. "You can't take him from me." "Oh, but I already have," the figure replied, words slithering from its lips like smoke. "And I can always take more." Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, enveloping her. They wrapped around her limbs, pulling her deeper into the void, into a place where light struggled to exist. She gasped, a surge of cold surging through her as tendrils coiled tighter. "No!" she screamed, wrenching her arms, but it felt like fighting water. The harder she fought, the more they constricted, their whispers wrapping around her mind, sapping her will. "You won't take me! You won't take him!" "Then prove it," the figure taunted, its voice dripping with malice. "Face your fears. Confront your failure." Jenna felt bile rise in her throat. Images swirled, Victor's smile overshadowed by pain. The moment betrayal pierced her heart like an icy dagger. She had failed him before, trusting too deeply. But no, not this time, not again. With one fierce cry, she threw her hands forward, willing the radiant light to push back the darkness. The shadows were relentless, but she wouldn't be extinguished. Memories flooded her mind, moments of joy, laughter, love, intertwined with loss. They collected into a shimmering energy, crackling around her fingertips, glowing fiercely.
"Victor is still out there. He believes in me," she shouted defiantly, her heart hammering in sync with the pulsing light. With every word, the shadows writhed, hissing, desperate to silence her voice. But determination roared inside her as she recited the words from the book, forcing them from her heart. "I will not be your prisoner." Suddenly, the figure lunged, its cold hand reaching for her throat, intent on choking the light from her soul. In that instant, instincts kicked in. Jenna dropped to her knees, narrowly missing the grasp of those sharp fingers. The darkness behind her roared, and she felt the pressure of hundreds of eyes watching her, waiting for her to falter. But then, behind the figure, the shadows started to shimmer, their solid forms cracking like glass under pressure. Encouraged, Jenna pushed harder, her voice loud and echoing, filling the vast emptiness. "This is my heart, my hope. You can't have it." The figure recoiled, snarling, its mouth twisting into a snarl, fangs glinting. "You're making a grave mistake." "And you underestimate me," Jenna fired back, channeling every ounce of love she had for Victor. The brilliant light surged, breaking through the darkness and forming a barrier. The shadows screeched, a cacophony of tortured souls, until, like a dying ember, there was silence. The figure let out a wail that reverberated through the fabric of her mind. Darkness crashed like waves against the light, each shadow clawing in defeat. Jenna steadied herself, holding on to the warmth of her love, feeding the light, refusing to let it flicker away. But then the grip around her began to loosen without warning. The figure shimmered, shifting to and fro, growing smaller but angrier. "You will regret this, Jenna. My return is inevitable." The last flickers of darkness spiraled into the air, evaporating as if they could no longer cling to her spirit. Jenna felt the weight ease from her shoulders, the cold loosening its grip. As the figure dissolved into the fading shadows, a new voice echoed, mellow yet menacing. "You may have won the battle, but the war is far from over. Our games will begin anew." Jenna stumbled back, breathless, trying to understand. "What do you mean?" And then she realized. The pressure was still there, hanging heavily in the air. Something deeper lay hidden beyond the chaos she had just thwarted. Something more malevolent, lurking, waiting. With dread pooling in her gut, Jenna stood, heart racing. The shadows may have receded, but they were not vanquished. "What now?" she whispered into the silence, afraid to hear the answer. But only echoes returned, unanswered. Jenna felt as if her heart had shattered in the wake of that final confrontation. The shadows were gone, but the emptiness left behind was palpable. She stood in the center of the eerie room, surrounded by remnants of her terror, the vibrant glow of the book fading like a distant memory. "Victor!" she called again, desperation clawing at her throat. The silence that answered reminded her of what she had fought against, an abyss yearning to consume her hope. Every beat felt like a countdown, and panic wrapped around her like a suffocating fog. "Mommy!" The sound of a familiar voice, faint but steady as a candle in the night, ignited a spark of hope. "Mommy, where are you?" "Victor!" Jenna's heart soared. She whipped around, eyes scanning the hollow shelves and forgotten toys.
I'm here! I'm coming!" She ran toward the voice, following the echo. But the shadows hadn't vanished entirely. Remnants lingered, flickering at the edges of her vision. "Stay away!" she shouted, brandishing the book like a shield, as if it could quell the darkness that thrived off her anxieties. "Help me!" Victor's voice seemed to materialize from every corner, disembodied but full of urgency. Jenna pushed forward, instinct driving her to the edge of the encroaching dark. She felt the book tremble in her hands, as if attuned to the tumult inside her. With every step, the memories burst within her. Victor's laughter, the warmth of his small hands, the way he'd curl up against her when night fell. Those very images infused her with strength. "I will find you," she vowed, louder than ever before. "We will escape this together." The shadows roiled in response, whispering her fears, seeping their cold tendrils into her, whispering of abandonment and defeat. "Only despair lies ahead," they hissed. "You won't find him, not here." "Get away from me!" Anger surged within her, igniting a blazing fire against the cold dread. "You don't control my fate." The shadows recoiled as her voice rose, yet they peppered the room with whispers of doubt, echoing memories of every mistake that crept like spiders crawling over her skin. She stood her ground, hands trembling around the book, summoning the force of light that flickered from within. "You'll pay for your defiance, Jenna." The figure of shadow slithered closer, pooling around her feet, a heavy darkness weighing down her courage. "I won't give in." The truth rang out, more potent than fear. The air thrummed with her defiance, growing denser as shadows twisted and turned. Jenna's heart raced as clarity struck. Victor was close, his spirit intertwined with hers. "Focus!" the spectral figure whispered, spirit growing brighter. Its eyes shone with encouragement, and Jenna felt strength guide her hands. Taking a deep breath, she opened the book again. The pages glowed brightly, illuminating the space around her. "I call upon the love I carry," she declared, projecting her voice firmly. "Victor, I am coming." Every word resonated through her heartbeat, urging the light to shine brighter. Light uncoiled around her like wildfire. The shadows shrieked, thrashing in panic as radiant streams of hope chased them back. "Mommy!" came Victor's voice, clearer now, weaving through the turmoil that sought to engulf her. "Stay with me, Victor. I'm almost there," Jenna streamed, knowing full well what she was fighting for. The shadows lashed out one final time, merging into a blackened mass, straining to pull her down. They reached inside her, seeking to erode her belief, but she pressed on, clutching the unfurling light from the book. "You have no power!" she shouted, heart constricting. "Remember your love," the figure urged, its presence a beacon guiding her as ever. "No more illusions!" Jenna shouted in fervor, pushing the light forward. The darkness recoiled, revealing a glimmer behind it, the outline of a small figure. "Victor!" she cried, eyes widening in disbelief and hope. The boy stood at the edge of the swirling shadows, arms outstretched, innocent and bright against the turmoil. As she grasped for him, the warmth flowed like molten light, filling her with renewed vigor. "I'm here, my love. I'll never let you go."
The room erupted as the shadows screeched, howling in anguish as their forms evaporated against the blinding brilliance radiating from the book. "No!" they cried, fading into the darkness, whispers growing faint, promising to return but ultimately retreating. In a final surge, it seemed to Jenna that the darkness was drawn and held at bay. Those whispers substitute for absence. Jenna sailed toward her son, locking him in an embrace. They were two whispers in a chaotic storm, but in that moment everything else faded. She cradled him tightly. Their love banished the remnants of fear. "Mommy, I was so scared," Victor murmured, tears sparkling like stars against his cherubic cheeks. Despite the chaos lying just beyond their grasp, he was there, whole and warm. "I know, baby," she whispered, choking back sobs, "but we're okay now. We're safe." Though the shadows would remain, a haunting reminder of their escape, the light rekindled within and whispered wordlessly, casting warmth in the echo of the darkness that lurked beyond. As they stepped forward, tiny hands grasping hers, Jenna felt a fierce hope swell, building resilience against whatever awaited. Together, they would face those shadows the moment they returned. And as they moved into the glow cast from within, it became clearer than ever. Love was their shield, and together they were unbreakable. This is the moment to show your support.
You need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories I'll be sharing. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. It makes a difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this gripping conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see where this intense journey ends.